Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Premiere Pro, where you'll learn everything you need to know to go from a 100% beginner to a professional level video editor. We'll release at least one new tutorial every week, and if there's anything you'd like to see covered in the future, let me know in the comments. Okay, in volume 14.5, we showed you how to kind of cut and refine your A-roll, and we went on a little tangent there where we had some sub-lessons, but now we are back to whole numbers. Volume 15, you've earned it. So basically, what we're going to do is learn how to now start cutting some B-roll. We have our content here with the A-roll, and now we need B-roll to match, and we need to time it. And this is where it starts going from raw footage to it starts to become like a finished or more finished, more polished video, something that starts to become more and more ready to present. So what you want to do, and we went over in previous lessons how to organize your project and how to organize your footage, but you want to get all of your B-roll in first before you cut everything. This step is where editors start to get hung up and inefficiencies start to compile. So basically, if you're editing footage partially, you have some of your assets in, you're starting to put your cut together, and then later you say, oh, let me bring some more stuff in. You're not being very efficient, but you're also kind of affecting the story you're telling, because you may not have had, it's like a painting, right? It's a palette. You don't want to start a painting with half the colors on your palette. You want all of your palette, and then you can make the best representation of what the picture you're painting. And really in editing, we're storytelling, we're painting a picture. So that's a pretty solid analogy. So basically, we have all of our B-roll here. So we have some drone footage that we captured. We have some actual game footage that we captured. And then we have our pregame footage, which is some nice establishing type stuff, some behind the scenes kind of stuff. So now we have our assets. And by the way, we shot this several years ago. This is when Tim Tebow was playing minor league ball, and he was there that day. So you might see him in some of this footage. And there you go. 15. Got Tim Tebow playing minor league baseball in Hartford, Connecticut. So this serves as really good interstitial establishing kind of montage-y type footage. But getting into how you choose your B-roll, this is very important, because again, this is where editors start to get hung up and you start to lose sight of the greater picture. And this is where videos can fall flat. So the number one mission of B-roll is to support the A-roll, to support the content, the actual story of the video. So no matter how cool any footage looks, it doesn't work if it doesn't support what your subject or your character is saying. So at the end of this kind of part of the series where we're using this Yard Goats video, I'm going to post in the description for the final video that goes over this footage, our actual finished video that came out of this shoot. And there's really, probably 100 times as much footage shot is what actually ends up in the final video. But the reason is that we had to choose what really matched the story that we crafted. So you'll see that and it'll make a lot of sense. So like footage like this, of their clubhouse and the little VIP area, it's good stuff. But if it doesn't match what he's saying, then there's no point in using it. So before we even select our first B-roll clip, we want to kind of analyze what our subject is saying, and we want to find images that really match and enhance that. So let's look at the first clip.
My name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for the Hartford Yard Goats.
Great. And a decision we also make is what do we want on camera and what do we want to be covered, right? If you look at a lot of high-end sports documentaries, usually when they introduce themselves, you'll see something else. You'll see B-roll of them, or even B-roll of the A-roll, which would be like them smiling or them sitting down in the chair, something like that. That's a technique. If you watch any kind of ESPN documentary, it's used a lot, and it's very high end, and it's a very nice way to get into an interview. So what we would want to say is, okay, well, if he's introducing himself, maybe let's find some B-roll of him doing what he does, which is pitching. So let's see what we have here. And I may not have screened this footage as well as I should have ahead of time, but I know that we do have some footage here of Matt pitching. We're just going to kind of go through. Very nice day for baseball. So we actually shot for 2 full days in the stadium. We had full access there. We're in the broadcast booth. Actually, if I remember, that's some of their on-site camera. That's pretty cool there. This might be a really cool shot. So when you're going through B-roll, you want to select what might possibly work, but this isn't our final selection. So this is what we call selecting footage. It's a genius way to call it, I know. So we're really going to select some footage that's going to possibly work. And then once we've selected that footage aside, then we're going to start to see what works. And it's like a little puzzle. We'll put it there and maybe it looks good. Maybe it doesn't. We try something else. And just looking at this now, I'm like, and I believe that is Matt on the mound, or maybe it's not. We should be sure about that. But just little candid shots like this can be really cool. So maybe we'll take a piece of it. We'll just set it aside and let's find a little more stable shot. So one important thing about B-roll too is you're cutting raw footage. So when you're shooting B-roll as a shooter, to be efficient, you shouldn't be stopping and starting the camera every 2 seconds. A, you end up with way too many clips. And B, it's inefficient because you have to keep resetting. When you're doing B-roll, that's meant to be cut up by an editor. So when you're out there shooting, you're just going to get what you need and then quickly get the next shot and then quickly get the next shot. And you're trying to, as efficiently as possible, give the editor as many tools, again, in the palette to use. So actually, if we look at this, let's turn that down. You know, you'll have parts that are usable and then, oh, we're reframing. Okay, and now we're going to go tighter to get that. And we're also following our subject that we don't know what they're going to do. So there might be like 2 or 3 good seconds there, and then we're getting our next shot. So if you look through B-roll and you wonder, like, why is this, you know, so shaky? It's the B-roll as shot is not meant to be used as a whole clip. It's meant to give you little pieces that you can sprinkle into your video. So like we're sitting there for a while. Okay, got enough of that. Now we move on to another angle. Okay, now we're doing kind of a cool angle there, which would be a nice transition. So let's just pick a piece here. Video to get too long. Maybe something like that. I'm going to do an in point. Give it like 2 or 3 seconds. Give it an out point. And again, I'm not saying I'm going to use this. I'm just setting this aside. And what I usually like to do is just start putting it at the back of my timeline and stacking it up there. But let's see if we can find something of Matt pitching. And I know it was a night game, so this will be after the game. So let's see what we can find. There we go. And this would be a night game. Slow motion. That's kind of a nice shot right there. So now if you think about this, with what he just said, introducing himself, let's see, I know we have some more close-up footage here. How about that? Because we're talking about the pitcher, or we're hearing from the pitcher, so we want to see him as close-up as possible. So let's look at that. That's pretty cool. So I'd like to go a little further back to the wind-up motion. We're going to hit in, let it go. And right about there, right as the ball leaves the frame. And we're going to go to an out point. And now, generally, again, I'm going to put this at the end. I would like to see how this times over what he said, and you can already see it looks pretty close. So if we maybe do that, and let's just preview that.
My name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for the Hartford Yard Goats.
So you see that, how that sets him up, and that makes sense because we're hearing from Matt Pierpont and we're seeing Matt Pierpont doing what he says he does. And it sounds really simple, but that's really where a lot of editors start to get caught up, is like, oh, I love that city shot, but does that city shot make sense with what our subject just said? So because I like that, I'm actually going to just leave that there for now, tentatively, and we'll see how this cuts. But the rest of them I probably am going to put at the end of the timeline, and we'll decide later how to allocate those. So let's basically look at the next phrase.
I was born into a family that loved baseball. I had an older brother, older sister, 4 and 2 years older than me. So as soon as I was born, I was around the game and started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old, and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
So here's what's happening. We don't have B-roll of the family because we shot at the stadium. So this is a good point to bring them on camera. And after someone introduces themselves, you want them on camera pretty soon anyway to establish them. 2, maybe the specifics of the history would have to be the actual footage. But if you say something general like T-ball or something like that, we actually can use something like stock footage. So after we cut all of our B-roll that we shot, I will show you in the next video how we may pick out some stock footage that can complement what we may be missing. And this is also where you can take your edits to another level. And it's very important to pick out stock roll that looks like you could have shot it or that matches what you're doing, because you don't want it to look like someone's watching a completely different video for those clips, because it really takes you out of it. So what I would do here is I would decide what part of this is going to be on camera and what part of it is going to be covered. So let's listen again.
I was born into a family that loved baseball. I had an older brother, older sister, 4 and 2 years older than me. So as soon as I was born, I was around the game and started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old, and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
So maybe from like around the game, you can start to generally show the game, and then T-ball. So we might cut that. So let's look at this.
Started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old, and got into T-ball.
So what we can do here, and this is something I haven't really showed yet. So you can use the cut tool, or you can use the C on the keyboard. Premiere has this great feature that a lot of people don't realize, and it will like change the game of your edits. Because whether you're looking at something you did before and you don't quite remember, or you pass it off to an editor, if you use the labeling function to label your clips by color, you can come up with, and it doesn't matter what you assign to what, this is what you remember and what works for you. You can come up with a color to represent different meanings or different actions in your timeline. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to cut this here. So that's the section here. I hit V to get my pointer tool back, my arrow tool, selection tool, doesn't matter. And I'm going to highlight this clip, right click, label, and you have all these colors. I actually discovered this by accident one day, and I was like, well, wow, what have I been doing my whole editing career? So what I like to do for the footage that I know I want to have on camera, I like to label it green. It's like a green light. That's the one you want, right? And look at that. So now, if we've established that green means you're going to be on camera, in your edit, a lot of times what will waste time is you go through clips because you forget what's in there. But when you're going to look at this, you instantly have a visual cue that that's on camera. And when you do that, now you don't have to keep searching for what's going to be B-roll, what's going to be on camera. When you're cutting B-roll, you're going to ignore that because you know that's going to be on camera. Now, if you also pass this off to another editor and you say, hey, you know, I just don't have a lot of time. I need you to cut some B-roll for this so we can get it to the client. Well, they're going to open your timeline and they're going to say, oh, okay, perfect. I see exactly what will be on camera. I see exactly what I need to cover. This will go really easy. And as you get more advanced with your editing and work with different teams, you're going to have more situations where you pick up what another editor did or you pass off to another editor. And it is so important, all these things we've been talking about organizing your projects. It is so important to keep that clean and organized for passing back and forth, because you can literally spend 30 minutes, an hour trying to figure out what someone did or they can of what you did. Whereas something as simple as cut some B-roll and all the clips are labeled in green, you can literally cut hours off an edit when you get into longer form stuff. So very important. And again, I personally have a color code I've come up with. It doesn't matter. What it matters is that it's consistent and it's what will work for you. So you can choose any color to mean anything, but whatever's consistent is what will work for you. And what I do also is I make my B-roll blue. I just do something that's easy to remember. Blue B-roll, the B, I remember that. So I label that blue. And what starts to emerge very quickly is you can look at a timeline and you just kind of know what everything is. And I can't even express how much time that will save you when you get into more complex and longer form editing. Now, I did those manually on the timeline, but another way you can do it, this is all B-roll. So I can actually select all my clips here. So you select the top clip in the folder, go to the bottom clip, press and hold shift. It will select them all. You can right click, And you can also adjust the label to a different spot. And I'm just going to make all of those blue. So it does two things. Now in your bin, you see that this is all B-roll. So again, now you don't have to look through every clip to go, I wonder what's B-roll, what's A-roll. Blue is B-roll, but look at this. Now that I've selected them in the bin, if I take any clip from here and drag it down, it's already going to be blue because I've already told the system that's what I want these clips to be. So that is super powerful. And I went into that for a while, but because we're doing a video on B-roll, I think it's important to understand things like that. So let's quickly, we don't want it to get too long. Let's quickly see what else we can find. So let's, we've decided that this is going to be stock footage that we put over this back half here.
With my brother, probably when I was 3 or 4 years old, and got into T-ball.
So let's do this. Let's just randomly pick a color here. Something we probably wouldn't use a lot. So let's just say rose, right? Anything that's rose colored, I know I'm putting stock footage over now. So again, this is a very quick way to get to the next level of the edit once I pick that footage. So these empty parts, if you look at the previous video, we just paste them for timing. That's where you're going to put some B-roll, some of those interstitials, maybe some stock footage. That's going to move your edit along and pace your edit. So let's just keep going very quickly and listen to the next few lines and see if we can quickly find some clips that might match.
I've been very blessed to have a family that's so supportive. My brother played in college, and he was close to home, so we got to go watch his games all the time. And growing up, we were always at the ballpark all the time. So it was every level I've played at, my family's been right there with me. They'll be out.
Okay, so up until every level we've played at,
every level I've played at,
I'd like to see him come back on camera there. So I'm actually going to make that green. I missed it. Be careful that you're cutting the right spot there. You can always hit undo. It's a wonderful thing. And I'm just going to highlight. There you go. Label. Make it green. And we know that'll be on camera. And this here again,
my brother played in college.
He's talking about his family. We can find some somewhat obscure stock footage clips. So they're like nondescript, maybe blurred, more like establishing, more far away type shots that could work as the family, but don't necessarily like give away that, yeah, this is clearly stock footage. So I we'll find some stuff and we'll show that in the next video. Storyblocks is not a sponsor, but they are who we use. Maybe one day. We're currently at tens of subscribers. I think when we get into some triple digits, maybe they'll think about it. So we've decided in establishing this edit that anything covered by stock is going to be rose colored. So you see how you can very quickly say that's B-roll, that's on camera, that's stock footage that's going to be covered over that. All right. So let's go here.
After my junior year, I started pitching only and focusing on that. And been doing that ever since. My college pitching coach, Clint.
So what we might want to do is just show maybe some blurred stock footage of pitching that doesn't show the actual face, because he's talking about the college career and we don't want to show this because this is far beyond college. Let's listen again.
My junior year, I started pitching only and focusing on that. And been doing.
So we're going to want some stock footage of like someone in college pitching that we can't quite tell is not our subject, but could be. Because if you show someone else's face, that takes you out of it. But I also can't show him pitching in the stadium because that's not after his junior, or that's not college. That is when he's a professional. So let's listen to the next clip.
My college pitching coach, Clint Chrysler, we're still very, very close. We talk a lot, but honestly, if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be here today.
Okay, so right there, that's a nice little bite to see him on camera again. So the first step in cutting B-roll is deciding what's going to be B-roll and what's going to be A-roll. So again, now we're getting a little momentum here. Let's go down to the next clip.
He really taught me a lot. He played minor league baseball for a long time and really got me headed in the right direction and got my foot in the door. And luckily I've had a lot of great coaches since then to, help.
So a lot of times when someone finishes a statement is a good time to put them on camera. So I'm going to go to the luckily.
Got my foot in the door, and luckily I've had.
So luckily is where we want to see him again. And that part in between is going to be more stock footage because we really shot him there. So unless he's talking about what's happening now, so again, it has to match. So it doesn't make sense to show the stadium stuff if he's talking about stuff that might have happened 10 years ago. So this will be on camera. This will be green.
He really taught me a lot. He played minor league baseball for a long time and really taught me.
So we're just going to want to find some nice stock footage of baseball. So we're going to make that, again, rose is our color for what's going to be covered by stock footage. We're working our way through here. And these spaces are just going to be places where we probably rise the music and just have some nice transitional and interstitial B-roll shots.
Chipper Jones always been my favorite player. I think my brother, it was his favorite player first, and I always wanted to do everything that he wanted to do. So growing up, the Braves were on TBS a lot growing up, so was able to watch a lot of their games. And, I played shortstop, I played third base, so I, always wanted to be like Chipper Jones.
Great. So once he says I, that's a big cue. Once a subject says I, that's a good time to show them. So we're going to find that.
Was able to watch a lot of their games, and, I played.
There we go. This is a good time to take him back on camera. So you see, I'm kind of going what I call like three-dimensionally. I'm not just linear, like every second only looking at that. I'm looking at what do I want to do a little later, and then that may decide what I do before that. So
their games and,
So good time to take our subject back on camera. We're going to cut there. And we're going to label this green. And this first
Chipper
part.
Jones always been my favorite player, I think.
So if you know baseball, Chipper Jones was a very popular player for the Atlanta Braves in the 90s, an excellent player, Hall of Famer. And so here's a very important point. Depending on where this video is going to end up, and as an editor, you need to know that, it may be okay to use footage of the Braves and of Chipper Jones, because say you're playing this at an awards banquet that no one's ever going to see. And I shouldn't say no one, but I mean public performance, because a lot of copyright gets into public performance. It could be like a fundraiser, a banquet dinner, something that's meant for a private group. A lot of times, whether there's money exchange or not has to do with it. But essentially, if you're going to use copyrighted material, you have to do it in a situation that's for a private audience and where no money. And I think I have to make the disclaimer, this is not legal advice, but you should be aware of when you can and can't use footage. So I should say, rather than even a blanket that, on a case-by-case basis, you need to investigate based on the footage and based on where it's being shown if you are allowed to use that footage. Sometimes you can get permission from that copyright holder and it's okay. Sometimes you may be working with someone that does own that footage and it's okay. But if you use footage that's copyrighted and you don't have permission and it's for profit and it's being shown on television or something like that, you definitely are going to run into some issues. So just be aware of that. For the purposes of education, which is one of the exceptions of copyright, again, this is not legal advice, but as you do this, you do learn some of the boundaries. Education allows you for educational purposes because you are using the material in a new way and you are using it to further knowledge and not to specifically profit off of it. There are exceptions allowed for that. So for the purpose of this video, we can find some Chipper Jones B-roll because I'm showing you, educating you, I'm adding something to the original product. I'm not just simply conveying the product to you. Not legal advice. So long story short, we're going to find some Chipper Jones videos. So that's going to be some stock footage as well that we'll have to acquire. And folks, I can feel it coming. I think there is going to be a part 2 to this video, but it's because we don't want to leave anything out, but we also don't want to take up an hour of your time. So I'm just going to go ahead and label this as rows. So we're almost through our clips here. And you can very easily quickly see, okay, cool. We have these on-camera points and we have these stock footage points. And what's really good about this is you typically want a fairly even spacing of on-camera to footage. You don't want a lot of cluster of on-camera and then a lot of cluster of footage. You want to kind of check in and reestablish your subject, but you also don't want like over and over just to be your subject and cuts and things like that. So this looks pretty balanced. So let's look at this last clip.
We're into the games from the start to the finish, and it makes it a lot of fun to come to the ballpark and, and do what we love.
And we tease, we'll fix that audio later. I'll show you how to do that. So coincidentally, he just talked about the fans and look at what we have here. Oh, look at that. So we're going to select a clip. So let's hit an endpoint there.
And now fans, it's time for the Ask Community College and Tonsas Community.
And also what I want to do before I pick a clip, it looks pretty good, but I think we can get some better composed shots. And also, again, depending on where it is, you may want to steer away from the alcohol, you know, like, because in certain situations that could not be appropriate. I do kind of like the perspective of this, so. And also there's a little, especially because the shot is static, just even finding a point where the woman raises her arm, that will cut better than just people sitting there. So we're going to find that point. We're going to hit I for in, and I'm just going to give it like a few seconds. There we go. There's our fans. I'm going to hit O for out. I'm not going to line that up. I'm just going to kind of put it back here. And I'm going to hit, if it doesn't snap into place, this is why. You can click that or hit the S, and then that'll allow you to snap your clip into place so you know it's like exactly lined up. So what we want to do is find, so it's interesting, in this particular interview we selected, he doesn't talk much about the current, he talks about the past. So there will be a good amount of stock footage, and we may do another cut where he talks more about the stadium. But again, like I said, the final video will show you. In the final video, you don't see a lot of this of the interview, and that's why, is because we didn't have a lot of B-roll to cover it. We didn't want to use a lot of stock. Stock footage is better now, but even a few years ago, it wasn't as good. So back then, we really wanted to use what we shot. And when you'll see in the final video, that's why we chose clips where he really talks a lot about the present and about the team and the stadium and things like that. So let's see what else we have for fan footage. Oh, we are at clip number 19. Let's just go down there. And he talks about the games and everything. There we go. We'll look at all those fans running the field. That's pretty cool. So let's hit in. Get that. All right, we're talking about the fans. We're going to hit out. And we can always later, I just very quickly selected what might work. We can change our in points, our out points. We just are like, this is kind of close. Let's select something for now. Let's maybe get one more. Okay. So that's kind of cool. Let's take a look at that. We have a nice, now look at that. We have a shot of the city that kind of pans down. So let's see if that's usable. Because in B-roll, you want to really look through your footage and make sure it is usable. Not all of it will be usable, and in fact, most of it will not be usable. Oh, and you hear the unnamed photographer talking about the type of shot. Let's take a look here. Okay, so see, that was set up, and then, but that pan, that was just a move to get a different shot. That wasn't what would be a usable move on camera. So we accidentally dropped that. So we're going to hit undo. There you go. See if we can find one more. Now, this is pretty cool. This is a nice perspective shot. We're talking about the fans, and we see a fan watching the game, and you can see that we focused. Now we're sharp. Okay, and then, so that kind of like looking around stuff really illustrates what he's talking about. Let's find a nice point here. Maybe we go in here. And he kind of stepped out. Let's just kind of scrub through and see if we have anything else interesting here. That's kind of cool. And we're talking about fans plural. And again, when you have a static shot, it's good when the subject has some action and aren't just kind of sitting there. So you can see we adjusted for our exposure there. That shot right there with the head nod and turning, that's a nice action. And it really does get that much surgical, but it makes a difference. So let's go back to the beginning. Press in. Right there. Let's hit out. And I'm going to drag that down to the timeline. And then I'm going to show you one more trick, because I guess we're going to have to wrap up part one, but we're going to start, I think in part two, what we'll do is we'll select out that stock footage, and then the following part is when we incorporate everything together. So looking at that shot, and he's talking about the fans, and that's a nice, well-composed shot. We have our foreground, midground, background, and we have a nice foreground, really sharp fans, what we're talking about, fans plural. The midground, we have kind of one of the sponsors and some of the crowd blurred out. Then we have the far background. You can just see some of the players. So there's Some really wonderful composition going on here. And then one thing I'll show you really quickly is you can make this come alive a little bit more, especially being a shot on sticks, is you can go to your last frame and set a keyframe for scale. Go to your effects controls, scale, and then go to your first frame. You can press up on the keyboard as long as you make sure your timeline's highlighted. And it's going to go to the previous frame. And just maybe, let's say 103%. So now it's keyframed. It's going to scale down. So the last keyframe is 100%, which is the actual size of the video. The first keyframe we set to 103%, which means it's scaling it up by 103%. And what Premiere is going to do is say, okay, I know you'd like to be at 100% here. I know you'd like to be at 103% here. What I'm going to do is evenly go between those two mathematical values over the time you've told me. So it's all mathematical. And the result you get is a keyframed zoom out. But that's subtle motion. And if you really go back and watch a lot of, again, high-end documentaries, sports documentaries, little things like that that you may not have noticed are what make them feel big. It's what makes them feel energetic and moves the story forward. So we quickly just did that. And you'll see as we put this over the dialogue in the next video, you're going to see that, wow, that just kind of has a feeling and a momentum to it. And that's how you start to get from just raw footage and clips to like telling a story and more complex editing. So we're going to stop from here because part 2, we basically selected a very small amount of B-roll from what we shot. Because again, at the beginning, what did we say? It needs to match what our subject is saying. But now if we quickly look at our timeline, so let's pretend here, we're going to play a little game, right? Let's pretend here. Okay, yeah, we don't need to play games, but let's pretend here that this now at this point, sometimes teams will have editors that do different things. So you might have an associate editor whose only job is to set up the project, get the footage in, sync up any sound, and then you might pass it off to your next editor. So let's say we are the next editor and now we've selected some B-roll, we've decided what's going to be on camera and decided what's going to be covered. Now this may be going to our next editor whose job is to look at this project for the very first time and say, I have to decide what B-roll is going to go where and what stock footage we're going to do to paste this. So now that editor can open this timeline right away and go, oh, wonderful. I can see this is a B-roll clip that we shot because it's in blue. These are other B-roll clips I have to use. I can see that this is going to be on camera. So I'll make sure not to cover these. And I can see that this is where I need to find my stock footage. So a new editor who's never seen the project can very quickly open this and go, I know exactly how to get started. I know what to do. So we will leave it here. In volume 16, we're basically going to show you how to pick out some stock footage that matches your A-roll and then how to incorporate all together. And we're going to start really putting this together. For more Premiere Pro tutorials, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and make sure to ring the notification bell. And as soon as the next volume is uploaded, you'll find the link in the description.